I don't know what's going on.
I think Arthur's feed is spinning. It looks like Nani.
Yes, yes.
Oh wait, maybe he's back. Oh, we lost him. Oh no. Oh no! Right at the beginning, we lost the host.
Yeah, right. But let us wait a bit. Probably
Sure,
he will come. And
sure.
but right now we are already live in his Facebook
Okay,
page.
wonderful, wonderful. We'll say hi to everyone who's watching. Hi.
Yeah, great. For those one who don't know you, uh, you'd like to introduce yourself. Who is Mark?
Sure, Nani. So, my name is Mark Sagarin. I am originally from New York City in the United States, but now I live in a suburb of Washington, D.C. for the last 20 plus years. And since 2006, so maybe 18, the last 18 years, I've been teaching conversational English to people in our area. We have a very international community, people from all over the world, and we meet them and we practice English, how to listen, how to speak, how to be able to go to a store and ask for something you want. And since the pandemic, particularly, so say since 2020, we've expanded our reach by going on Zoom as well. So we have meetings. That's how I met Nani, who was in Angola at the time, now in Brazil. He started joining our meetings on Zoom because coming to our meetings in person would have been a very long trip, right? So now with Zoom, we meet people all over the world joining us all hours of the day and night. And I think our goal is to make people feel comfortable when they're practicing and learning English, to build their confidence, to not worry about making mistakes, and most importantly, to enjoy what we're doing. So it's a fun experience and they want to continue to practice English whenever they possibly can.
Okay, Mark. Thank you so much due to your
Sure,
explanation.
sure.
I'm so exciting to dealing with this interview because I used to consider you as my mentor, as my teacher, and I'm
Thank you.
so glad to be here and
Me too.
make the guidance with this
Mm-hmm.
interview.
Oh, mm-hmm. Me
Arthur
too.
is back.
There's Arthur. Hmm.
Yeah, Arthur is
Can you?
back
Yes, Mark. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Can you
Absolutely,
hear
perfectly.
me,
Arthur.
Mark?
I can, yes. Do you hear me, Arthur? I hope so. I hear you. And I hear in the background, is that a dog or a bird? I hear animal noises in the back. Hmm.
Nani, Nani, Nani,
Yeah. Yes,
Nani.
yes,
Or is he not hearing
Uh,
us?
Nani.
yes, Arthur. Yes, Arthur.
I can't hear me. I can't hear Mark.
Oh,
Hmm.
Can you give me 2 minutes?
okay, okay. It's okay. It's
I
okay.
want to change the position.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes,
Huh.
Are you hearing me?
I hear you perfectly,
And what about
Hmm.
Mark?
You do not hear
but I
me?
can't hear.
Arthur, what about now? Do you hear me now? Uh oh, he's spinning again.
Yes, I don't
Hmm.
know what's going on.
Hmm.
Yes,
As,
but let
hmm.
us continue
Sure.
as I was saying. It is being a lot of like a pleasure to dealing
Hmm.
with this interview, and I'd like to share everything that I've been learning with you, and I would like that Mark also share because since you are dealing with teaching
Hmm.
almost more than 30 years, probably, I'm not sure, and I guess we have a lot of to hear from you. And the first question is
Sure.
how to start learning a language, specifically the English. How is to deal with the beginning? with the struggle that we can face?
It's a great question, Nani. I think it's one that so many people ask about whatever the language is they want to learn. And in this case, as you asked about English, I think one of the first things we need to do is ask ourselves, why do we want to learn this language, right? Is it for a job opportunity? Is it for something at school? Is it for some personal relationship, or maybe a combination of more than one of those things? So ask ourselves why, to get the motivation, to have a goal, where we'd like to eventually reach, and then think of ways of getting there. And I think for many people who study English in their native countries, um, usually they're studying written English, they're reading, they're learning how to write, they're learning all about grammar, and those are all extremely important. However, our focus in our meetings is on conversational English, so people can understand when someone is speaking to them in English, and they can make themselves understood to the other person. And for that, listening is the number one thing. We have to hear English, ideally every single day. And I know most people are not surrounded by native English speakers wherever they live, so we use other methods like listening to podcasts, social media, watching Netflix, movies, TV, all these different things where we're listening to English rather than just reading it, right? We have to hear it. Our listening is a number one skill for our ability to speak, right? That would
Okay.
be a place to start. Mhm.
Okay, Marky.
Okay, great.
Sure. Hi, Arthur. Do you hear me now?
Okay, perfectly.
Great, great.
Uh,
Great,
yeah,
Arthur.
you were
Then
saying hearing. Yes,
I was
yes.
like starting the conversation, but since you are like the moderator, yeah, you can go through. You can continue
Okay.
with the interview.
Okay. I think Marky were saying that the listening is the first
Hmm.
thing we have. How is it possible? Yes, Marky.
Yes.
For
Hmm.
kids they want to learn English. Kids of 2 or 5 years old, they want to learn English. Is it listening important?
I think listening and watching television, children learn much quicker than adults, right? Children have the ability to learn any subject, particularly another language, very quickly. We struggle as adults. The older we are, the more difficult, the more challenging it could be. But with children, if we make it fun, right? It's a game. So they're learning new words, they're learning letters, they're learning numbers, they're learning colors, they're learning objects, family relatives, the names in English, mother, father, brother, sister. And we do all these things and we engage them in a way that they find exciting and something that they want to keep doing. So they're motivated on their own. It does not feel like homework necessarily. I think the earlier the age, the better, and the kids will love it. They'll have a fun time with the language.
Okay, perfect. There are people, Marky. They
Hmm.
say, no, I can't read. I can't read. How can I begin speaking English? It means in this case, as you said before,
Hmm.
listening is the most important. It means
Hmm.
someone who doesn't know reading can learn English perfectly.
I think they can. The eventual goal is to be able to read, write, listen, and speak. Right, all four of them. Different people have learn with different methods. Some people are more visual; they need to see the words and they learn that way. Other people need to hear it. Again, we hope to combine all of these things, but I think for most people, particularly adults, we want them to feel motivated. They have to have a reason why they want to, in this case, learn English. And the more motivated they are, I think they'll find that the challenge is very achievable. Right? There's going to be frustration. We make mistakes every day. That's fine. I know traditionally when I went to school, they always yelled at you if you made a mistake. As Nani can tell you, in our meetings when we meet, we encourage people to make mistakes because it shows that they're trying, right? We try to say a word, we try to define a word, and even if we do not get it correctly, we're doing it in English, we're thinking in English, and we're practicing, and we're realizing it's okay if I'm not correct in this particular case. It's just part of the process, right? And building our confidence, our motivation, feeling more comfortable with the language the more we do it.
Okay, perfect. Just in listening, there in the
Hmm.
United States of America, what kind of methods you use just to make people listening? To watch TV or
Hmm.
to buy smartphone, give to the kids, they will be listening from smartphone or from TV, or give them a radio or recorded type recording. What are the methods you use in the United States of America?
Excellent, all excellent questions and suggestions, Arthur. As Nani knows from having attended our meetings for a number of years now, I encourage as many methods as possible. Try as many ones as we can think of, and see which one works best for each individual, right? Some people, it's going to be watching TV. They love watching television and movies, and they might be doing it with closed captions, with subtitles in English to help them understand in the beginning. Other people, so many young people, particularly around the world that I meet, have learned a lot of their English skills by listening to music in English, right? They love listening to songs in English, and that helps them a lot. And with children, and even with adults, start for adults that are beginners, just starting to learn English, reading children's books, watching cartoons and children's programs as adults to start at the basic level, and then they can work their way up, because it'd be very challenging if we're just learning the language as an adult to start at a very high level. It's going to be very frustrating. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. And talking about the TV, the
Mhm.
watching TV, uh, there are people they say, I'm studying English about the 2, 3 years,
Mhm.
but I can't understand when a native is speaking. When a native is speaking, I can't understand it. Then what can you do for someone who is beginning to study English to understand what someone is speaking on TV?
Another great question, Arthur. And I know how they feel because my second language is Spanish. So I've been studying Spanish.
Oh,
I
okay.
started a long time ago, decades ago, before you were born. I started in school, and then I stopped. And then recently I started studying again. And I know what it feels like, that I can read, I can write. But when I'm listening to a native speaker, a Spanish speaker in that case, speaking live, it all sounds so fast, right? And it's hard to process everything they're saying. And then you think about one word and they're still talking, and then you're totally lost. I understand this completely. So I think one thing that helps many people is when they're watching a television program, whether it's the news or entertainment, comedy, drama, have the subtitles in English. So that can help them for a while to understand, to process everything that's being said. And many people find that after a while, they do not need the subtitles anymore. And even if they do not get 100% of everything that's being said, they start to understand more and more, and it builds their confidence. I think so much of this is, it's hard to feel comfortable doing something that's new to us, and it's hard to feel confident when we're not feeling comfortable. So we're trying to make people feel more comfortable to help build their confidence when it comes to the language. And I think subtitles in the beginning certainly can help when we're listening to TV.
Okay, okay, subtitles. And when someone says that I have to start with the subtitles, when
I think it's
maybe
good.
with the okay,
Each person will be different. Some people it could be years, and that's okay. Other people maybe they're processing it quicker, and for them, 6 months or a year, and they say, "Oh, I can try without." Something, Arthur, I should mention that many people that we meet all over the world, what they like to do is they watch the same TV show, they watch the same movie many, many times over and over to help them understand. They're not just watching it once, maybe once for entertainment, but after that, they're going back and watching again and again and again to make the sounds more understandable for them. And they, oh, I missed this the first time, or oh, I missed this the fourth time, but now I understand what was being said. So repetition, number one thing, right? We have to repeat as often as possible. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Repeat what they listen on radio or something or
Sure.
on mass
Sure.
media.
I
Mhm.
think everything, not as Nani knows from our Zoom meetings. For me, I'm very big on practice and repetition. The example I give is that if we think, I don't know, Arthur, are you a football fan? Do you like soccer?
No, I'm football fan. I'm a football fan. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So if we think of the best players in the world in any sport, football, basketball, any sport, they practice every single day for hours and they're already the best at what they do. Practice is so important for them and it's important for us to build our skill level. Language is a skill like football. It's a skill. So how do we get better at a skill? Practice. Practice is repeating over and over, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. It's a lifelong process. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Then once we practice English, is it sport important, or what kind of sport we may involve in teaching English?
I think
Mhm.
something that I've found is very helpful, excuse me, for many people is that
Okay.
if they're watching television or listening to a podcast or on the radio or something streaming on the internet, is find something that is very interesting to you. Something, some people love cooking, some people love football, some people like sewing, whatever, all these different things, whatever they like to do, then find programs about that subject in English. So you are so highly motivated to understand what they're talking about in English because you already love cooking, you already love football, you already love sewing. And then when you're watching or listening to a program in English about this thing that's so interesting to you, it's it doesn't feel like you're working. It feels like it's a joy because after when you the sense of accomplishment when you start to understand what they're talking about in English, something that you already know in your native language, it's fantastic because it's about a subject that is very important to you or something that you love or something that you enjoy doing.
Okay, perfect. But talking about the writing and the grammar, is
Mm,
it important
mm.
at the beginning, writing and using grammar in the same time? Is it important?
This is another great question, Arthur. I think grammar is very important, but like most languages, English grammar can be very challenging, right? It's not so easy. So
Okay.
we do not want people to get so scared off by correcting every little grammar mistake that they make in the beginning. They might say, "This is impossible. I give up," right? We do not want that to happen. So I think we have to find a balance. Learning grammar is very important, but again, certainly in the beginning, early on, I would not want that to be the biggest emphasis because it might hold people back from going forward, from a fear of making mistakes. They might not say anything or write anything because they think, oh, I know this is going to be wrong. So we want them to try. We'll make mistakes, we'll learn from them, and then maybe the further and further we progress, there might be more of an emphasis on all of the grammar. But in the beginning, we just want people to, in our case, either talk or write, and we can work on the grammar as we go along. Because it can be very intimidating. I know grammar, it's either right or it's wrong. And whenever we hear wrong, or, so it can be scary. And it's not a good feeling, right? Something, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made this mistake. That's okay. We all do, right?
Okay, okay, perfect. Why this question, Mr. Murray? Because
Mm-hmm.
here we have those confusing
Mm,
words like how to use do, how to use make, how am I
mm,
going to use the wait? I'm going to use expect. Then these words, how is it possible to be used or familiar to these words?
Yeah, another great question, Arthur. You're asking so many great questions, which reminds me that to me, often the best way to learn is by asking questions, not always answering them, because sometimes they're difficult to answer. And at certain stages, we might not know in another language the answer. But as long as we can think of the questions, it shows we're processing and we're learning. And eventually we'll be able to answer. And the answer to your specific question is it's definitely repetition. We need to hear as much spoken English as possible and then speak as often as we can out loud. We have to speak out loud, not just reading in our head. And even if there's no one around us, if we're alone and or if we're in the house with family where no one speaks English, we have to talk to ourselves out loud in English. And then we'll learn, when do I use make? When do I use do? When do I use expect? When do I use wait? There's no substitute. It's just hearing it as often as possible and then saying it. That this is the number one thing, because I know, again, from studying Spanish, and I know there's a relationship between Spanish and Portuguese. I know they're not the same, but there are a lot of similarities. And the verb structure in Portuguese and Spanish is very different at times than English, right? Like the grammar of I am or I have in English is very different than Spanish and Portuguese. So it's just repetition, hearing it and then saying it, and over and over and over. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. It means here the key is just hearing and the having repetition of the words.
Mm-hmm.
This is the
Definitely.
secret.
It's
Okay, okay.
I think people, and to make it fun, right? Like you enjoy it, because it feels great when we can say, like when we can say something that we know how to say in our native language, but we're struggling in English, and then when we're able to express ourselves, go, wow, this is great, right? It's a good feeling.
Okay, okay, perfect. No, Mr. Mariki, sometime here we have many methods we use to teach English because we focus on grammar, grammar, grammar. After people they record many words and
Mm-hmm.
they expect to speak.
Mm-hmm.
This is the method here in Angola. People they use too much. Then yes, we learned the best way, one of the best way or the first method is by listening. Listening after we learn. Then for those people, they like it to use grammar, grammar and correcting people. Is
Mm-hmm.
it also a good method like this?
I think the method you're describing in Angola, Arthur, is popular all around the world. I hear this from people. They could be from China, they can be from Argentina, Angola, Germany, all over the world. I think this is a very common method. And it's good for our grammar skills. It's probably very good for reading and writing, but for speaking, it might not be the number one way to maximize our abilities, because so many people have studied English that I meet maybe for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years in their countries. They know grammar probably better than most native English speakers here. They really know the
Oh,
rules of grammar. But then when they try to speak, or when someone talks to them, they have difficulty understanding basic sentences or saying them because the focus was so much on grammar. So we have to find a balance, right? It's like anything in life. Find some type of balance. Grammar, very important, but we also need, as we we're talking about, we need to hear as much English as possible and speak it. Don't worry about mistakes. Grammar is fixable, right? So find some balance, because if the focus is just on reading, writing, and grammar, we'll be great at those skills, but speaking and listening are going to suffer. We won't be where we'd
okay,
like to be.
okay, amazing, amazing. And the other question, Mister, there are people they write perfectly, they write
Mm-hmm.
perfectly, but when time to speak, they can't speak.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it happen to those people? What is happening? Because if you talk to them, write what you want to say, the one is going to write perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
but speaking, they can't speak.
Yeah, it's this is a big question, right? This sort of ties together everything that you and I have just talked about, right? Because I meet people, believe it or not, Arthur, I meet people who taught English in their native countries, right? They were English teachers. They learned English incredibly well. Their grammar is probably better than mine. They know all the reading and writing structures in English, but then when it comes to speaking, they're very embarrassed, or they feel, oh God, I'm not sure what to say. And I hear this over and over again. So you've hit on a really big point that ties together all of this. I think there's no substitute for hearing English and speaking it. And I know for many people, it's challenging to find someone to practice speaking English with, right? Ideally, we'd know someone who's a native English speaker and we talk to them all the time. For most people, that's not realistic. It just doesn't happen. So we have to use the methods we talked about: radio, internet, podcasts, social media, and just immerse ourselves, surround ourselves with English as many hours a day as possible. And that way we start to feel more comfortable, because the number one TV show I think that people have watched over the years since I've been doing this is that American situation comedy Friends. People around the world seem to watch Friends. They liked it. And it was more just conversational English, right? A bunch of young people in New York City talking about, joking in a very informal, conversational way. I think that's the way to approach the language for most people, because when we just focus on the grammar, and even if we get it at a very high level, we don't feel comfortable talking because we're so focused on all the rules. Whereas if we just imagine we're sitting around with a group of people, group of friends, and just talking about, oh, do you like what you had for breakfast? Or, oh, who is your boyfriend? Or oh, what did you think of that movie? And you're just talking. We're much more comfortable. We're much more relaxed, and we don't focus as much on, did I say it grammatically 100% correct? We're not so focused on that. We're just expressing ourselves in English, and I think that's the goal that we want to get for everyone. And it's a good challenge. It takes a long time. It's a process, right? But I think it works. We see it with people time and again. Hmm.
Okay, okay. But is it possible a
Hmm.
non-native to speak like a native? Is it possible?
I think it's certainly
Someone.
possible, and
Mhm.
and and,
Okay.
and I've met examples of people who do. Usually, they start at a younger age. Not always, but usually from the time they were children, they've been learning English. So it's possible. I think the goal for most people, I hear this question that you're asking a lot, like, Mark, how can I sound like a native? And I try to redirect it, because if that's our goal, we might get frustrated quite often, because we're saying, oh, I don't sound like the person on television, or I don't sound like Mark, or I don't sound like some teacher that I had. And that can be frustrating. So rather than focusing on sounding like a native, which can be done, and again, I know examples of it, I've met them, I would just say, our goal should be, we want to understand what people say to us when they're speaking to us in English, and we want them to understand what we're saying. Let's get to there, and then after that, we'll see where else we can go. But that should be the goal: to understand and to be understood in English. And that's definitely achievable. I've met, thousands and thousands of people who do this. Absolutely.
Sorry,
Okay,
sorry,
perfect.
guys. Sorry
Oh,
for
mhm.
interrupt you, guys.
Hi, Nani.
Here we have a commentary that someone comments on Facebook, and I would like to hear even from Arthur or even from Mark's point.
Hmm.
The the person says that the confusion on using do and make in linguistic is called collocation,
Hmm.
and I never heard about how we have to nominate when the people are making confusion about these two words. Is it true? The person is saying that this this confusion is called collocation.
Arthur, do you want to start or do you
Yeah,
want me? Either way is good.
yeah, 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 perfect, perfect. The one is right. The one is right when the one is say is collocation. Because there are books. They give the name for these words collocation, but it's the same to say confusing words or collocation. These words or this aspect is the same.
Yeah. Excellent, Arthur. And I would just add that I understand, like, if someone is studying English at school, whether it's primary school, high school, university, whatever level, so they're focusing on a lot of these things because they'll be taking exams and they're trying to get a good score. I understand that. But if we're practicing or learning the language outside of that structure, just if someone is doing it on their own or in a more formal, a more informal way, I'm not so concerned about the labels as the practical aspect, right? In other words, when do we use to make, when do we use to do in English? And depending on what someone's first language is, it can be very confusing because when you translate it from Portuguese to English, you might use one verb, but when you translate it into English to Portuguese, it's going to be a different verb for the same action, right? So depending on why we're learning and where we're learning, the focus can be a little different, right? To me, since my focus is on conversational English, I just want people to learn how to use the words, and I'm not so concerned about labeling the structure, which is very important in school. But in real life, when we're having a conversation, we're not talking about, oh wait, is that an idiom or is that slang? We're just talking and we're just listening, right? So both are important depending on where we are. Mhm.
Okay, okay, Mr. Mark, thank you. One of the last question, Mr. One of the last question is
Sure.
about the writing. Yeah, it's about the writing.
Okay.
Here, we, here, we as we study Portuguese, we speak Portuguese. The
Hmm.
way we write in Portuguese is is almost different from English.
Hmm.
How someone can begin writing in English? Is it possible to begin writing without the alphabet?
I think so. It's going to depend on their first language. Luckily, many of the languages have the same alphabet or very similar alphabet: English, Spanish, Portuguese, French. There's some minor differences, and then of course there are people coming from a place like Chinese where they're characters and not letters, or Korean where it's totally different alphabet. I think in the beginning, they're going to have to learn the alphabet to write. I think, and even if they're an adult and they're starting to learn, they can start at a beginning level, certainly with children's books, right? The basics that we teach children, we can learn as adults. And I think that will help us go in the direction that we want. Because if we start off at too high a level as a beginner, it's going to be very frustrating and demoralizing, and we might just want to say this is too difficult, right? So start at that basic level and then we work our way up. And I think, again, it just gives a much stronger sense of confidence and feeling comfortable with what we're trying to do. So it can absolutely be done, Arthur. And again, the only other thing I'd add is everyone learns in a little different way, right? So we have to find what works best for that individual.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, Mr. Mark, 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 just Mark. Then thank you for
Oh,
this
thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Muito
The last
obrigado. Thank
words.
you. Mhm.
Okay, okay. The last words, Mr. Oh, Mark. The last word, Mark.
Oh,
You
I
have a
want to
call.
say,
Yeah.
sure. I just want to thank you, Arthur, and thank you, Nani, for inviting me. I feel honored to be here. I think it's wonderful that we're connecting Angola, Brazil, and the United States, and with the same goal that is, in this specific case, to help everyone with their English language skills and hopefully to enjoy uh, their process when it comes to English.
Okay. The pleasure is all us. Then thank you, Mr. Oh, thank you, Mark. for
Thank
this
you,
video.
Arthur.
And yeah,
Thank
thank you. And then more many days we're going to see us maybe on Zoom program or
Sure.
for
Oh,
further
sure.
information. Okay. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much, Mark.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank you,
Arthur.
Mr.
Thanks so much.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
Pleasure is
okay,
mine.
guys. I'm so glad to be you both here. I have to say thank you due to make it possible happen. The main goal of this live, I guess we achieved that. That is talking about how to begin and improve English. I already know that there are some question that we do not speak about it, but
Okay.
in another moment, in
Mm-hmm.
another opportunity, I'm sure that we gonna achieve that because we have another stuffs to do, and the argument of this meeting is that we should be live 30 minutes to 40, and we
Wonderful.
are almost 35 minutes, and
Mhm.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad, and I hope you see you soon
Mm-hmm.
in the next times. Arthur, your
Definitely.
last words.
Okay, my last word has to thank you, Nani, Mariki, okay, for better information. We going to see us. Thank you,
Great.
Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, next time. Next time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Next time, definitely.
okay. Mark, what
Mm-hmm.
about you? Your last word. But before you start, I just want to make a specific question to Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur, since you
Mm-hmm.
are English teacher in Angola, what does the think that you can learn from the Mark's point?
Okay, the things that I learned from Mark on is the first, the introduction, the Mark said we have to first is hearing. People they have to listen more, listen. Then I enjoy this method, and I'm going to apply. I'm going to use in my teaching. Okay, I enjoy
Mm,
it so much. This method, just listen. After people they are going to speak.
Great.
okay, thank you. Mark, your last words?
I want to thank you both. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Nani, for connecting the two of us and for allowing the three of us to be here. And again, I think we all learn a lot, not just about English, but about each other, our cultures, our countries. And I think meetings like this, broadcasts like this, videos like this, meetings on Zoom, wherever we can, to meet people and to learn about them, and I think that is just another way of helping us in the process, in this case specifically, to learn and practice English. But I think we get so much more than even just the language skills when we have meetings like this.
Okay,
Okay, amazing,
great. It was amazing.
Mhm.
Once more, thank you so much
Thank
to
you.
having you here, and see you on next time.
Hmm. Definitely.
okay.
Okay, bye
Okay.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, Mr. Nani.
Okay, bye.